Good morning, everybody. It's Easter Sunday. It was early in the morning, so I snuck down here to the basement. Figured I'd shoot a little video and just talk real quick about some of the stuff I've learned over the past couple of days since I gave up on trying to get my lathe to stop turning taper. So I went back to some videos I had watched quite a while ago, and actually I must have forgotten a lot of the key details about. I checked out Tom Lipton's video. Ox Tool is his channel. Great channel. He's got a two-part video on leveling and setting up one of his lathes. And then I also watched a video. Adam Booth, I think is his name. A-Bomb is his page. Another great page. And of course there are others out there too, but those are the two that I watched and came to the same conclusion, which is that typical, I'm not doing this right. So one of the key factors I noticed with both of their videos was that they had a pretty big piece of stock in there. Tom, I don't know how big the one A-Bomb was using, but it looked pretty big, especially since it was a big lathe. And then Tom Lipton was using, I believe, a 2-inch diameter hunk of aluminum. And I think it was only about 12 inches long total, so once it was inserted in the chuck, it wasn't sticking out too far. And then, they did the undercut, and they had the two collars, which is, the classic way to do it. So problem number one, you got to use thicker stock. Tom Lipton explained it. He said you just can't do it with a one inch piece of stock. You're gonna have too much flex. You're gonna have too much. Tom did another interesting thing, which was he center drilled the end and used the tailstock to support the piece while he did the undercuts. And then he took the tailstock away for the test cuts. Because you can't have it supported by the tailstock, because any error due to offset of the tailstock is going to be added into your it's going to compound your problems. So, but what was interesting to me was he was talking about that. I forget the terminology he was using, but he was talking about basically that he wanted to negate wear of the cutting bit as it's cutting. Which is why he said, one of the reasons why you undercut that whole section, so you're only turning those two little collars. Negate the pressure of the cutting, loading of the tool, things like that. All kinds of technical mumbo jumbo, but all very valid points. So, and then the other thing he did was in part one of his series. He showed how the first thing he did was he took out his precision level and he leveled his lathe. And then he showed how you calibrate a precision level. And when he went through the explanation of how to calibrate it and everything, I realized that I can't just make the assumption I made that just because the bubble's in the same place when I put the lathe, when I put the level in the same position, that it's going to be okay. No, I need to calibrate the level before I checked the level on the lathe. So he showed how you calibrate it, which I had no idea how to do. And so I figured first thing I got to do is I got to calibrate my level. So I think that's what I'll do this morning. I'll clean up this pigsty, have a little more coffee, wake me up a little bit more, get the brain firing on all, 3 cylinders or whatever's up there, whatever's left up there working. And we'll go from there. All right. So first let's talk about my surface plate, for lack of a better term. This is the closest thing I've got to a surface plate, and it's like a cast iron surface plate. It's got 3 leveling feet and a tripod, because that's the easiest way to level in both axes is with the tripod situation. Because you only have to adjust 1 foot up front here to level this axis and 1 foot on the end here to level this axis, as opposed to if you had a 4-point system, then it gets a little bit trickier. But anyways, So this thing, I bought this quite a while ago, and the only thing I know about this thing is that it was used for very precise work of some type. And I know that this is a very flat cast iron top on here, and because it's as good as it gets for me with a surface plate, this is what I got. So this is what I use. There's some imperfections on the top, but for the most part, this thing's extra flat. I do wipe it down occasionally, but anyways. So you also, he talked about you want to check and make sure you have absolutely no burrs on the bottom of your level, no burrs on your lathe bed, which, I may have not accounted for that exactly. And then the other thing too is one of the guys actually used, I think, 1, 2, 3 blocks across the ways, and then put the level on top of the blocks. And then I think Tom may have actually even had the lathe on the carriage and moved the carriage back and forth. I'll have to go back and review that. But for right now, let's talk about calibrating the level. So my whole problem was that I knew that by adjusting this locking nut right here, that I could, loosening this locking nut and adjusting this nut underneath here, that I could basically change whatever this bubble was reading. And I knew that I couldn't just put it in the middle unless I knew that it was on a perfectly level surface. Well, how the heck am I going to know if it's level if I don't have a level that's working correctly? So that's when Tom's video came to the rescue, because he pointed out some basic truths of geometry, which I guess if I had thought really hard, I'd like to think that I would have came up with on my own. But take for instance this. I know this is a very flat plane, okay? But I have no way of knowing if this is level right now. Matter of fact, I can almost guarantee it's not level right now. However, because it's a flat plane, that means that if we took a line and rotated the line throughout an axis point in the middle, that at some point on this plane there is a point where the line is level. So basically what we do is we rotate the level until the bubble goes right where we want it in the middle. Alright, getting close. Matter of fact, right there is right on. Alright, he also brought up some other very good points. He talked about not handling the level too much, because if you hold the level for a long period of time, the heat from your hand is actually going to affect the bubble. So, right now I've got this. He also said make sure you look at both ends of the bubble. Anyways, I've got the bubble is in the center position, but that's not level because the thing's not calibrated. And the way I could prove that it's not calibrated is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this big block, and I'm going to put the block right here. Okay. And then I'm going to take the whole level, rotate it end over end, slide it up against the block, okay, to the same position, and now the bubble's way off. So that is how I know that the level is not calibrated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this adjustment and try and bring the bubble back this way some, but not all the way to the 0 point, because then when I flip it over it'll just be wrong again. So I'm going to bring it like part way over. Right now it's almost like it's almost bottomed out on the end there. Okay, so let's try that. So it really takes a bit of trial and error. So now I've brought the bubble back closer towards the middle, and I want to see how close it matches when I flip it around this way. Oops, didn't mean to move the block. A little rough there. All right, so that's much closer. That's much closer. So now, because I've gotten it closer, I think I'm going to re-swivel this to try and find where it's at the center again. All right, so seems like coming back this way is more where I want to be. All right, that's right dead center. So again, I'm going to bring my block back over. Flip it end over end. Okay, and that's much closer. Now I'm only just over one full division off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this now so that I take half of that error up. It's about half right there. So now I'm going to flip it end over end, see if that's about the same. That looks pretty good. It's not in the center, but it's matching when I flip it. So now, let's see if we can't find where that actual level point is. That's going the other way, so I'm going to keep turning it this way. Alright, that's right on. So again, I'm going to bring my block up. Flip it end over end. Perfect. So now I'm just going to lock the locking nut for the adjustment and try and avoid disturbing the setting here. Come on, this nut. I don't know what size this nut is. Might have some burrs on it, maybe. The bubble is just a tiny bit longer than the space between the two lines. So this end of the bubble is right on the line. This end of the bubble is sticking out over past it, and I want that to be even. And right now it's not. So by having the lock nut loose, that actually changed something. Let's see. Find a better wrench than this. There's an 11mm wrench. Alright, so that bubble's right on the line on this side, and it's over a little bit on this side. Just the opposite. Alright, took quite a bit of fussing, but I finally got it to the point where I can actually have the bubble right between the two lines, exactly where it should be, even when I flip the level end over end. So again, the bubble's just a tiny bit longer than the space between the two big lines. So right now, technically, there's a tiny bit more bubble hanging over here than there is there. But I'm not going to get crazy with this thing. And actually, that's probably about the same here now too. So, all right, so I'm good with that. So now, if I theoretically, if I wanted to level this plate, I would now move my level this way, and I would adjust my feet till it's level, which that's level left to right. And then I would turn this 90 degrees. If I wanted to get really finicky about it, I would probably use a square to square it to the edges. Now that's level front to back. And then I could just do another quick check. Flip it end over end. Wait for the bubble to settle, and yeah, right on. Okay, so now I've leveled the plate, although I didn't need to because I'm not using the plate anymore. Now I already knew the lathe wasn't level because I didn't have this calibrated. So
I'm not surprised at all that now when I put it on there, it's not level. But what I was wondering was whether or not I had it out of level the same amount and same direction on this end as that end, which would essentially eliminate the twist. In other words, if you think of the top of the ways as being a plane, okay, it doesn't matter if I tilt the plane this way or that way, as long as it's the same amount, it's going to still be a plane. Well, if I tilt one side more or less or in a different direction than the other side, that's when you start to you twist that plane, okay? And that's when things go pear-shaped. So, I'm looking at it right now, and I notice that this close end of the bubble is 3 divisions exactly past the big line going that way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double check and make sure I've still got, I should get the same reading when I flip this over end for end, because I'm coming right up against the tailstock here. And, the only reason I'm not sliding this under there more is because I want to be able to read the bubble looking straight down. And sure enough, exactly 3 divisions past the large mark. Perfect. As far as my level doing exactly what it should be doing. So now, take this whole thing, move it all the way down the other end, put it on the end there, and if I get the same reading, then I know I have no twist in my bed. If I don't get the same reading, well, then I have a real good explanation as for what the heck's going on and why I'm turning taper. So I'm actually hoping this is going to be out. Well, my luck's just not that good. Looking down from the top at the bubble, I can see that the bubble is maybe a third of the way over that line coming this way. So it's just barely out. So over the length of the whole lathe, I've got this thing out of level very little, which would indicate to me I should have had a very little bit of twist in the bed at all, if anything at all, which would mean that it certainly wouldn't explain the amount of taper that I'm getting. But as long as I've got this on here, why don't I see if I can't get this exactly on. So with my foot, I'm actually pushing that wrench that I have. I barely had to rotate that at all to bring that right on. And since I now have my, now that I have my level, level calibrated correctly, why not just level it correctly and have the bubble right where it should be, right in the middle. So let's go back this way and bring that. So this is effectively going to be bringing the front up. So now 2 divisions over. There's 1.5. I'm going to reposition my wrench. 1 division. Half a division. That's darn good right there. Just double check things by flipping it end over end. Now we'll do the other end. Alright, I just leveled at this end, so now I'm going to just flip this again. Let it settle. Perfect. I'm just going to double check the other end real quick, make sure nothing changed. Alright, so it was 1 division off down that end when I went back down there. So I adjusted the leg just a little bit to take that out, and then I came back down here and double checked this end, and this end is still in. So I now feel confident that I've got no twist in the bed. Well, I should feel confident there's no twist in the bed. Alright, now just for giggles, I've put the level on the carriage, and I've run it almost all the way down to where it's to the tailstock end. And my bubble, the end of my bubble is almost exactly 2 divisions that way from the line. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem, because the carriage might not, by design, might not be exactly level on top of the ways. I mean, I would have expected it would have been. But as long as when I move this down towards the chuck, this doesn't change appreciably, then that's a good sign. If that changes a lot, then it means what's happening is it means that the carriage is actually tilting on top of the ways due to excessive wear. Most of your wear is going to be up this end near the chuck here, so if it's going to change, I would expect it to change as I move towards the chuck, so that's why I'm starting at this end. Also, I know that there's less wear down this end because I've got my jibs adjusted for the carriage based on the wear over here, and when I come up way over towards this end, which I'm going to do very little turning. I mean, I'm going to have long pieces that I'm turning. Most of the time I'm going to spend most of my work right in this area right here, which is why all the wear is over here, so I adjust it to the wear here. That's why this is tight up this end. But if I loosen it up this end so that this carriage moves more freely up this non-wear end, then it'll be too sloppy down here. So bring it down just a little bit. And that still looks pretty good. And that looks good. It's still staying at that 2 divisions over. And that's pretty much as far as I can go without repositioning the level to the other side of the carriage. And that looks good there too. If I bring the level over here, let's see if that changes things too much. Moving it over caused something to happen. There might be something I didn't clean off. Alright, so that's like, now there's like 1 division over when I move it this way. That barely changes. So I'm happy with those kind of results. So I measured this. This is 1.25 inch diameter, the stuff I've been turning, but I turned it end over end now in the chuck. I've got about 7 inches between where this threaded area is on here and here. So I'm going to try and, even though this isn't full 2 inch like Tom Lipton would suggest, I'm going to try and still do my test cuts again on this now that I know the lathe is leveled again. Okay, first I clean this up along the length of where I want to work, and now I've cut the undercut area here. So that's my first collar and it's my second collar. But while I was doing that, just for the heck of it, I put the indicator on the back side of the lower stool post, and I noticed that if I pull on the post, I can deflect the post quite a bit. Well, some of that, actually, now that I look at it, is actually, that's actually the that's the backlash. Let's see, so if I wanted to really see how much of that is tool post deflection, I've got to reposition this magnet. I can't quite see, but it looks like it's very little. Maybe 1,000. Make sure this is as tight as it can be. And we can still deflect this 1,000th. Still pretty darn rigid though. I don't think that's my problem. How true is this running, I guess, is another good question. Well, not very true at all.